Okay. Okay, everybody. This is a really special. It's a special guest I've got here, and I should have asked. Would you pronounce your last name so that I don't butcher it?
Bonnello.
Okay, it's just simple. I didn't know if it was like something.
Hmm.
If I can mess it up, I will. So this.
Oh yeah, you won't mess it up anywhere near as badly as all the
Okay.
as all the mistakes I've had over the years, so it's fine.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. But this is Chris Bonnello from the UK. And what part of the UK are you?
Nottingham.
Okay. And Chris is a gift to our community in so many ways. I have just been reading on his website, and I really, really encourage anybody who is in our community to go there because there's a lot of excellent information there. And Chris was diagnosed about 8 months ago, so I'm still in the process of learning about myself and what autism is, and and I'm sure you probably know from the people you've talked with that have been in my shoes.
Including
It's
me, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
quite
could just say congratulations for that.
well. Thank you.
When people get diagnosed or get a diagnosis for their child, a lot of people answer, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," but maybe it's a bit revealing about my attitude towards them. But my first instinct is to say congratulations on getting the diagnosis because I know how much it helps.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I cannot think of it is. It's been a transformation for me. It's a metamorphosis. It's a rebirth. It's all these things. But it's been, and I'm fortunate because it's been a very positive thing for my life because I needed this. I really did. And I know that's it's been positive. It seems for a lot of people, but my traits are such that I haven't had the sensory struggles that people have. But I look back, and this is what's interesting, is I masked so much of it away that now I'm just really starting to literally physically feel things I didn't feel before. And so it's an interesting journey to say the least.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about who you are and what you do, and it's a fascinating story that you've got. So I'm going to listen too.
Okay. I used to be a primary school teacher, or elementary school teacher over there, and I didn't know I was autistic until I was 24.
Wow.
I just grew up thinking I was the weird kid. Hence the name of the website, autisticnotweird.com.
Gotcha.
And got the diagnosis a couple of years later. The diagnosis was Asperger's syndrome, or Asperger's syndrome, however you want to pronounce it. And after I left the teaching profession, having kept my autism a secret from pretty much everyone, mostly I have anxiety and a massively negative self-perception. It's surprising. I've got this reputation as a positive autism advocate, but I was not positive about my autism when I first learned about it. But having kept it a secret from everyone until I left teaching, obviously the natural next step was to tell the whole internet. So I launched Autistic Not Weird, and 3.5 years later, it seems to have gone rather well.
Yes.
84,000 Facebook followers, 1.8 million page hits on the website.
Wow.
One published book, soon to become 2 published books, and I've won several awards as well.
Yes.
I did not see this coming a few years ago.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's a fairly interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, when I was it was about 2 months before I was officially diagnosed that I found this out myself, and I had this feeling come over me because I was 59, and this is only 9 months. Well, no, I guess it was in the very first of the year, the 2nd of January. So we're 10 months in, but this feeling of wanting to make all of that past time count for something, because in a way I won't say it was a wasted time, but I couldn't be me. I mean, this is like the first time I feel like I'm really comfortable being me. And so I said, I want to give that purpose. There's got to be something other than just saying, okay, well, yeah, here we go. And but so that's why I'm trying to do these interviews. That's why I have my own little website that was just doing a chronology of my progress of discovering that I was autistic. And it's a good feeling to give back, and I can't imagine having the success that you've had. And I mean, it's so needed. It's great for both our community and for the people that need to learn about autism. So I just really congratulate you. I appreciate
Thank you.
what you're doing so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you've got a really healthy attitude towards this. This whole after how many years did you say before getting the diagnosis? 60. Sorry, I'm kind of asking your age, which is possibly a bit rude. But
No. You mean
after most of your life trying?
I was 50. I was 59 then. So I mean, I just in September had my birthday. So.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I've got a September birthday, but
Uh-huh.
anyway, yeah. Let's start that whole paragraph again. But yeah, I think you got a really healthy attitude for it, because after spending most of your life,
Yeah.
in your words, not being able to be yourself, but rather than just drawing a line under it and saying, okay, fine, those years were wasted, let's actually start living now. But like I said, take something from it. And my example of that would be mental health issues, which were at their worst during my mid-20s, and they absolutely sucked at the time. But these days, when I'm giving advice to people, and also because I've still got my hand in teaching, I'm a part-time special needs tutor. I give English and maths tuition for teenagers who are outside the education system, all of whom are autistic. And if I hadn't been through the firestorm of anxiety and mental health, etc., that I had, then I wouldn't be able to empathise with these students as much as they do, and I wouldn't have the personal insights into it that I do today. So good stuff can come out of bad, even if it's like squeezing blood out of a stone. There's always potential to take something good from negative experiences.
Yeah. Well, wow. Yeah, it's I hope to be able to, like I say, do something with this for myself, or not for myself. I mean, sure, it's for my personal. Like I said, literally, it's sort of to give my past life meaning. But there's so much that needs to be
as well.
Yeah, there's so much that needs to be done out there. I mean, I'm just really realizing, and for our community too. I mean, this one reason I wanted to do these interviews is that I'm surprised the number of comments I get that people go, there's so many people in isolation. I'm assuming this is something that's true worldwide, and that is that people who are autistic are still learning about their own autism. This is something new for us. There's so much education we need to do about ourselves, and that's what I'm finding is that people like to hear a conversation between two people with autism of what their experience is, and there's like, I do that too, or I know exactly what that is. And that's helped me a lot, and I'm hoping it will help other people too. So
it is great that we've got such a massive worldwide conversation going. I mean, I don't know how the autism community managed to function before the internet, and if you think autism is isolating these days, imagine how isolating it would have been before we had the opportunity to connect to people all across the world who do actually think in the same direction as you.
Yes.
So, being autistic isn't easy, but there are at least opportunities that we have now that we didn't have in previous years.
Yes, it's one of the interesting things as I look at my past is that I was drawn to people. My first exposure was working with people who are deaf, and I started volunteering at the state school here in Ohio, and I'm looking back at that, and I'm realizing part of it was because I felt accepted by their culture. It was just there was a connection there that I didn't understand at the time, but now I realize what it was doing. But this was back in late 70s, and in the United States, I think it was in 74, they passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, which gave the people with disabilities a legal standing or rights that they could enforce. So whether it was employment or just whatever accommodations were needed. Well, at that time, the deaf community was a very, very isolated community. And when the ADA was passed, it changed everything for them. And I think that the autism community is at that same stage now, to where this is an opportunity we have over the next, I don't know, we'll say, starting now and however long it would take. But if we become more visible, if we become more active in just building our communities and getting information out there, it was a transformation for the deaf community. And I think we're at that same time period for the autistic community. And like you said, with the internet and all the information and the way that we can get out there, and I mean, we have an opportunity to change a lot of ignorance into understanding.
Yeah, it is a massive opportunity, which is both exciting and a little bit, well, I'm not sure what the word is personally, but I get struck with a very real sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I close my talks by saying that we're at a bit of a crossroads in terms of autism understanding, where almost everyone has heard of autism, but not everyone understands what it is, how it impacts people, or the variety of ways that it impacts people.
Right.
And then I finish by saying, one way or another, we are going to reach the other side of that crossroads. Mm-hmm. And what autism awareness looks like when we get there depends entirely on how we choose to talk about autism now.
Yes.
Or is autism awareness just going to look like autism is a tragedy? We need to be scared of this rising tide of autism, and or are we going to have this strengths-based approach, which is quite open about the difficulties that autism can present, but without those difficulties leading the conversation and being the only thing that anyone knows about autism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Boy, I'm trying to, you said so much there as far as my mind went, oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point too. And that's a good point. So and then when you're done, I'm kind of going, what was that I was going to say? I don't know. I just know, back to just the idea of that, of getting information out there so that, like you said, the perception of what autism is and the people in the community, there's I'm just thinking of things like employment, education, just socialization. I have heard that some of the like stores and things in this country actually will have like an autism night or day, to where they try to accommodate the store to be more environmentally, and things like that. That if it just, I don't know, it needs to be out there, and I think if we get people that ask for those kind of things, and in a very kind way and in a very informative way, that you get out in the community, and it's just that this, like I say, this is our opportunity, I think, to get out there and really change the perception of autism. So. And that's what you've been doing, and that's what a lot of people. It's been great. It saved me. The internet. I can't imagine trying to do this alone. It would be probably worse than not knowing, because I would just not know. I need this contact with people. I need the information, because there's no services. I don't know how the UK is, but here basically they diagnose you. It's like, oh, I'll have a nice life. Go on.
Oh, yeah, and it's a bit of a postcode lottery. Like it changes depending on the area, which area you live in. But officially they're adult services. But with me, I got the diagnosis in January 2011, and was told, okay, we refer you to adult services.
Okay.
In May 2011, I got a letter saying, don't worry, Chris, we haven't forgotten you. And I got my first appointment in May 2016.
Oh, my gosh.
In that, I was told that that's a bit of an anomaly, so you should probably complain about that. It never normally takes that long. But in that time, I had got my first teaching job, then worked in a special school, then left teaching, then become an autism speaker and blogger, writer, and I hadn't yet won any awards, and I hadn't yet started speaking internationally. But they weren't to know that. I could have spent those 5 years. I could have been dead within those 5 years before they knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have any bad words to say about our NHS, National Health Service. I think every country should have one. I'm very glad to be in a country where you pay a little bit more in tax, but if you fall ill, you're covered. Nobody here goes bankrupt as a punishment for being ill.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, there are so many people with mental health problems in Britain. It's only really now that we're beginning to open up and talk about these things. I mean, when I was growing up, mental health problems meant that you were insane and need to be dragged off to an institution or whatever. But these days we're talking more openly about mental health issues. I'm also talking openly a lot more about autism. And in both cases, this means that a lot of people are now trying to access these services. And yeah, I can sympathise with the staff who have to deal with so many people, but there has to be a way of not making us wait 5 years to get seen by a professional.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've said this a lot in some of the videos I've made, is that it's our responsibility as autistic people in this world. We've got to make the differences. We've got to make the changes. People don't know what we need. A lot of us don't know what we need. So it's a learning process for everyone. And I guess, I'm sort of a bad person to talk to about some of this because I'm still learning so much. I'm learning the basics right now. But
don't call yourself a bad person to talk to about it. I think I've got insights about the autistic experience that I didn't have a couple of years ago. And as we say in teaching, there is no end to the learning experience. There's no point where you know everything. And I'd actually argue that in some cases, people who are in the middle of learning about things are perfect people to talk to, because you get to follow their experience of the transition period, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I've one of my friends was telling me when I first was diagnosed, it would take you a couple of years, she said, before you sort of really know yourself and get a handle on what's going on. And I thought, wow, and that
was the case with me, to be fair.
Yeah.
In 2009, I saw autism as a synonym for everything that is wrong with me. And I think intellectually, I knew that it was also Asperger's that gave me a really good memory and why I was so good at maths and so on. But at that time of my life, with everything that was going on, the only thing I was concentrating on were the negatives, and I'd suddenly been given a word for those negatives. And we noticed the very first thing anyone learns about autism is that it's supposed to be a bad thing. And if that's the perception that you're allowed to keep, then it was a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. But after a couple of years, I managed to make peace with myself, and the eventual diagnosis really did help about it. There was permission to be myself and assurance that I wasn't the wrong kind of person just because I wasn't like everyone else.
Wow, what you're saying about giving permission to be yourself, that's so true. That's
a feeling in life.
One of the things that sort of fascinates me too is the common experience that we all share. There may be different degrees of sensory and everything else, but there's a common foundation that, and like I say, my experience isn't as vast as yours, but I'm starting just to see whether it's just experiential. I was talking yesterday with a lady that's part of the Facebook group that we've got, and my jaw was hitting the ground when she would say things that I have as memories, but of course, I didn't talk with anyone about it. And to hear somebody talk about these profound experiences in your life, I mean, it's a connection. And I'm seeing that there's such a common shared experience about being autism, even though they may be very different traits, and I feel an incredible bond. This is the first time I have felt like I have belonged in this world. I hate to, almost to that level, because I just sort of accepted that. Well, one, I didn't know. I mean, it was normal, quote, normal for me, but I still felt completely isolated. I didn't feel really, and I know this would hurt everyone to hear that if they heard me say this, but I didn't feel really part of my family. Of course, you don't feel part of friends, and I mean, that was the social part for me was very difficult. But I accepted that as normal. Everything became under this label of it's normal. It's normal. I just kind of blew it off and said, okay, well, even though it didn't feel normal. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be home. It really is. I had a friend say that too, and I just remember the feeling of that, and that's exactly how it felt. As my journey is it was worth all the effort, because I have finally made it to the place I've been looking for. So I don't know if that was an experience you had too, or what it was like.
Yeah, it sounds strikingly similar to, well, not just my experience, but the experience of lots and lots of newly diagnosed autistic adults who have talked to. After years of feeling like you've been born on the wrong planet or something, you actually find your space. You find the community that you were built for.
Yes, yeah. It's a fascinating thing too. The whole concept of having a neurological system that is different, and this. This would be another great book you could write here. How is this? And this is basically, I'd love to talk about your book more too. And I'm assuming it was written, of course, from your neurodiverse perspective. And did you actually write into it? How am I put this? What it would be like? I mean, if everything was the opposite and neurotypical people were the minority, how different would society be structured? How different would language be structured? How different would government be structured? All those things I know would change, because don't you think?
I occasionally say during the talks that the only reason I have a disorder is because there's more of you than there are of me. If 99% of people thought like me, guess who'd be diagnosed with something?
Yeah.
And that is arguably the biggest challenge that a lot of autistic, I'd say the majority of autistic people face, the fact that we live in a world that's been designed with everyone else in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, true, a disproportionate amount of the inventions that make society work were probably made by autistic people, but still, somehow, despite that, the world does still seem to be designed with everyone else in mind. The school environment has been designed with the 99% of non-autistic children in mind. The workplace and job interviews have been designed with the 99% of the non-autistic workforce in mind.
Yes. Yeah.
So, autistic people can be incredible employees if they're given opportunities to play to their particular strengths, or accommodations as and when they need them.
Yes.
And just generally being seen as really valuable and valued workers, rather than, that's autistic employee, let's be a bit careful around them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the strategies or whatever that when we get out into the neurotypical community and are talking about autism, is that there are so many positive things that we could add to this world. Like you say, if we had control over what we need. I know that I work actually maintenance right now in an apartment. I do maintenance, and I'm not crazy about what I'm doing, but I'm starting to realize the benefits it's very flexible. I can basically sit down in my chair and think about what I want to do and then do it when I'm ready, which is, which is ideal, really. And, but I have a good sense of humor about all this, and I kind of laugh at myself when I start seeing how important routines are, and how, just all that whole autistic side of like, okay, I think this through, I get ready to do it, then I do it. And if something interrupts that process, I have to start over, or have to, but I have an opportunity to do it. So I'm actually pretty lucky in some ways where I work. If I work for some major corporation or some retail store or something where it's like, okay, you do your 8 to 5 and then you punch out and you go home. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way. I mean, not ideally. And if
I can empathize.
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I'm sorry again.
No, go on.
Oh, I thought you were. I didn't understand what you said this last.
I was about to say something, but realised you hadn't finished.
Okay. Yeah. Well, tell them. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about your book,
Okay.
Guerrillas.
Yes, that's. I can't believe how well the pre-order stage is going. I learned recently that on average, books sell 3,000 copies throughout their whole lifetimes, and only 250 to 300 of those were in the first year. Guerrillas is we're on day 36 out of 90 in the pre-order stage, and it's already sold more than 350.
Good.
So year one hasn't even begun. So it's incredible, really. In fact, I should probably actually talk about what it's about and what it actually is.
Okay.
So Guerrillas is a near-future war novel where most of the main characters are neurodiverse teenagers who escaped an attack on their special school. The basic premise is that the whole of Great Britain has been imprisoned in these giant walled citadels under the watchful eye of millions of clone soldiers, and only 12 people escaped to form this guerrilla force hidden in the countryside. And out of those 12 people, 8 of them are students who escaped the attack on their special school. And this means that some of them are smart as hell in the battlefield, but some have academic learning difficulties. All of them have various conditions, diagnoses, and a lot of them have personal mental health problems, which are generally the result of being looked down on by absolutely everyone because, you go to special ed, that means you're not worth as much as the rest of us, and so on. But now it's almost like we're talking about earlier, the tables have been turned, and now these people are the only ones left to fight this little war against this army of clones and try and free the British people. And it turns out there's quite a demand for representation of neurodiversity in fiction. I mean, I personally can't think of any books which have disabled / neurodivergent / autistic people in a story, but not as the victims or not as the token characters, but the actual heroes who are doing the fighting, and in a book that's quite open about the challenges they face, but they kick ass anyway.
Do you feel you wrote this? Who was your intended audience? Did you write this for our community, or did you write this as sort of an educational thing for...
It's really evolved over the years. I mean, originally I wrote it just for me in 2010 as a kind of coping strategy because I was unemployed and just trying to find something to fill up my days. So I invented this dystopian war novel, which probably wasn't going to get anywhere, but hey, it got me up in the morning and so on. And then a few years later, 2014, I started working in a special school, and I thought, you know what? This story would be so much better if the main characters were from a special school themselves. It's something that's not been done before, and it creates opportunities to say some pretty important things.
Yeah.
And then last year it was my dissertation for my master's degree in creative writing, and just I haven't actually answered your question about what the target audience is. I'd say the target audience is for those, it's basically anyone who wants a action-packed war story filled with characters that they'll love, even if they don't know anything about special needs. I suppose there are things to learn from the book about special needs and about autism and so on, but it's not written as an educational tool. It's written as a entertaining novel. But like all decent works of fiction, there are things you can take from it.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Cool. And so it sounds like it started off as, I mean, you didn't intend it. I mean, is this something you started off to publish, or was this more something you did for your own, to work out, just...
I was very aware that there probably wasn't a place in the market for yet another dystopia story, especially one that's written by a first-time author and so on. But as the years went by and got more confident, and to be honest, a lot more capable with my writing, not least because of the masters that I did, and also as I learned more about special education, more about, to be frank, a bit more about the market as well. Obviously, you don't write stuff for it to be marketable, because that's the wrong way to approach it. And besides, the market changes all the time, so it's just worthless anyway. But what I mean is, I recognised that there is a very real need for representation of autistic people, dyslexic people, and so on. And I use the phrase gap in the market, but what I really mean is the need for representation, which is at the moment lacking.
Yeah.
And I think now it's hit 100% of the necessary pre-orders, and it's definitely going to get published now. There is finally going to be a novel out there.
Wow.
Where people with special needs aren't just there as token characters; they're the actual heroes.
Well,
There's been loads of people buying it for their teenagers to read, which is really one of the things I was kind of after. Teenagers who get to read a story and actually identify with the main characters for once. Actually have characters who have been through things similar to them, well, obviously before the war started, because everything after the war started is pretty... but anyway, you get what I mean. Teenagers who can read about characters who they can actually empathise with and actually root for on a personal level.
Oh, yeah.
So it's quite brilliant that it's being received the way that it has.
Do you have a way of telling who has been purchasing? I mean, age-wise, or have they been people that are neurodiverse, or do you have?
Can I say it again?
I'm just the people that are supporting your book now. Do you have a sense of whether they are people on the spectrum, any kind of their age, or I'm just wondering, because it seems like
I suspect most of them are followers of Autistic Not Weird, or
okay. Yeah.
People have heard about it from from autism groups, because the biggest platform, so to speak, they have is Autism Not Weird's Facebook page. So that's where I've been talking about it the most. I've been sharing it in other autism-related groups as well. So obviously, I have no way of knowing who's autistic and who's not autistic, but given the amount of discussion there's been on autism-specific forums about it, then I suspect most of the readers will have an autism connection one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I was thinking too is what an inspiration, you are. Your success, and I mean, I can see people looking at you and saying, "I can too." If I mean, not it. I just, and that's. It is for me too. I'm doing this one because as I said, I want to give meaning to my past, but also it was seeing that other people have done it, and it inspires me to try. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people that I have met that they have a real knack for writing. Whether it's poetry or but poetry actually mostly, or just stories. Some of the ladies I've talked with that are on the Facebook site, and I just it's like I say, I think we're coming of age here as a community, and I think that if we do get a lot of people out there that are that take that chance and take their gifts and they present those to the world, I just think we're going to change the whole face of autism. And you're doing that, and that's what's, and like I said, I know I said this earlier, but I encourage people to go to your website, because there's a lot of, if you're searching for and learning about your own autism, you have a lot of good information there.
Thank you.
But now this is really exciting. Did you have? I was looking on your site, and did you have another book that you've written?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
The first book was called "What We Love Most About Life," and I had this crazy idea where I'd ask the autism community how many of your kids and teenagers want to be in a book, and ended up with an anthology of 150 autistic children and teenagers from 20 different countries around the world, all answering the question, what do you love most about life? So we got some really insightful answers, got some really loving answers, some completely hilarious answers, and it's a nice reflection of the amount of diversity there is within the autism spectrum. And the motivation behind it was, well, first of all, it's about time there was an actual positive autism-related book, because again, that's something that's sorely lacking. There's plenty of books out there which talk about the problems of autism, and the better ones talk about how to address certain problems and things like that. But there aren't many books that are just outright positive and allow people to read about autism and about autistic people and smile about it.
Yeah.
And the second motivation was that, as we talked about earlier, autism can feel so isolating if you're the only autistic person you know. And the reaction I've been hoping for, and to be fair, the reaction that I've often got is a young autistic person reading the book and thinking, wow, I'm not alone. It's not just me. There's all these different people living all around the world whose brains think in the same direction as me. And, well, for bonus points, 150 reasons why life is awesome.
I've noticed myself, and I feel it myself too. I mean, there is this, and I think I forget how exactly you said this, but it's almost like there's a medical model of autism that we define it in the pathological way. We don't. There's a whole other side to it, and it isn't all bad. And I think this is important for our community to realize too, and just for our own personal mental health, is that we need to also talk about the benefits. And that's going to help also the neurotypical community. And just
that's the tricky balance, because I understand the need for a not sure if pathological is the right word, but I understand the need for a diagnostic criteria which includes all these negative traits about autism, because, well, people do need to get an autism diagnosis, and weaknesses and deficiencies and so on, they need to be talked about, and they need to be addressed.
Right.
But they can't dominate the conversation. They can't be the only thing. And like you said, in fact, I imagine it's fairly similar to your experiences in the deaf community. The fact that, yes, everyone there has diagnosis of being deaf, but at the same time, it's not the only thing they have in common. It's not the only thing that's worth talking about in their community. It's
right.
I have to admit, I don't know much about the deaf community, and I've not had much contact with people within it, but I understand that it really is a community, and it's not just about hearing loss. There's more to it than that. Obviously, you're more qualified to talk about it than I am, but that'll be what I'd imagine, given my experiences in the autism community, where, yes, the diagnostic criteria is largely based around the negatives, but there's more to us than that, and our community is about more than that.
And I've actually, it was just a couple of days ago, actually, I had posted on one of the Facebook sites about of wanting to interview people, and I got a response that said, well, what, you went 60 years and didn't even know that you're autistic. how could you even understand my son who can barely function? And so there was, of course, this was a parent, and I understand where she's coming from. I do, but I guess that it kind of took me back, because I was like,
oh yeah,
because I want to be positive about it. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not discounting people's struggles that they've got with sensory things and things, but at the same time, for me, like I say, it's been a blessing. It really has, because I've needed this. I've been looking for this, and I'm fortunate to not have a lot of the sensory things that other people deal with. But and I don't want to feel guilty about being not having those problems.
Oh yeah, the human brain is very good at that, feeling guilty for not having it bad enough. Like, once in a while, I catch myself thinking, it's almost a form of imposter syndrome, which most humans have in my experience. But thinking, wait, but you went to a mainstream school. You can literally talk about your experiences. Are you truly autistic enough to talk on behalf of the autistic community? First off, I don't talk on behalf of all of the autistic community, because it's so wide, it's so vast. There are so many people's different experiences, but I at least try to accommodate as many people within that community as I can within the work that I do. But also, if everyone like me thought, no, I'm not qualified to talk about autism because I can literally talk about it, then who's left to talk about it other than non-autistic people?
Yeah.
I recognise the contribution that parents of profoundly disabled children, for example, can make to the conversation, and should make to the conversation. I'm not one of those people who think that it should be only autistic people who have any kind of insight about it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it should be autistic-led, but we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that we're somehow not autistic enough, or that we haven't been through enough misery and suffering in order to have an opinion.
Yeah.
In fact, on that note, try not to sound too dark about this, but so-called high-functioning autistic people do have their fair share of problems. In fact, in the last special school I worked at, I worked with both very profoundly disabled students and very, what people like to call, high-functioning students. And, well, let's just say that it was the more academically capable students who had previously attempted suicide.
Mm.
The main defining thing about having high-functioning autism is that people assume that you don't have difficulties, or they create an environment where you feel like you're not allowed to have any difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it comes from right there. You're not like my child. You're not autistic enough to complain about having these perfectly legitimate difficulties.
Well,
I think it's a really damaging thing when the autism community turns on each other like that.
Yeah. Excellent points, because as you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, I feel exactly what you're saying. There's almost a, am I autistic enough to actually even call myself that? And I still at times struggle with that. And but I do look back on my life, and I look back on career problems. I mean, if I had known, I don't know how much it would have changed if I had known. I mean, it may have gotten things worse. I don't know, but at least I would have had a tool there when I was, whether it was relationships, whether it was work related, whether it was career decisions and education and all these things that I made these blind choices of I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, and this is what it was. I was blind. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know myself. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know really what I liked. And those are very subtle problems, and people don't see that struggle inside. But I'm not proud of this.
We're good at hiding it, aren't we?
And say again.
We're just so good at hiding it.
Yes.
Because we're raised to believe that it should be hidden.
And I sort of reluctantly admit this, but I can be counted among those statistics of the suicide. As far as I went through that period of my life where I remember, there was some things, I guess I can. I'm trying to think of how much of this to disclose, but I had received. I'm trying to think of how much to tell. I had one of my family physicians had said, "I want you to go get an examination of your stomach." And basically, and I was like 20 years old at the time, and the results came back after the X-rays that said you have about 11 years of scarring from ulcers. So about the age of 9, I had started just this incredible, and I did that all in silence. I didn't even really admit it to myself. I remember having pains and stuff, but anyway, what that told me at that time was that I'm not happy. I'm covering something up. It was a crisis moment. And of course, you go to get help. Of course, I couldn't talk about what really the problem was because I didn't know what it was. And what the medical community says is, okay, it's depression, it's whatever, and they start treating you with medication for this and that. And there's, long story short, was that there was, they had given me some sort of something to calm your nerves and to keep your stomach from eating itself alive. And I had just said, that I don't know what else to do. And that's when I took a whole bottle of those pills, and it was a large bottle. And I told, and as I was sitting there thinking, okay, you can do this. This will probably do it. And something told me, it said, no, don't. You're going to find your answer. And it was just like, now is not the time. You just hang in there, And I did. So that's those, when I hear about this incredibly high percentage of people that are successful, I understand that, and that's one of the big reasons I think our community needs to get out there. And the information is going to help people. That's not acceptable. We need to change that somehow. This all started with, talking about that we go through a lot that people don't see. They don't see the struggle, and we hide it, and it's subtle things, but it's major. And internally, it's very difficult. Sorry, I don't know what to say from now. I'm a little frazzled here.
It's a difficult subject to talk about, but also an incredibly important topic to talk about. And well done for recovering in the way that you did, and also well done for discussing it. Get the feeling it was a rather improvised thing you just did there, but it is very important.
Well, if I could say anything to other people that are in that frame of mind, that is, just especially when you're younger, I won't say it gets easier, but you as your wisdom grows and your experience grows and your ability to cope grows, that things do change, and times do pass. I think, well, I don't know what to say, but unfortunately, that's not a good option to say that, put it that way, but, and the importance of, that's why our community, if I had known people, especially if I had known that I was autistic, that would probably never have been an issue for me. I would have had someone to talk to. I would have had some context to put all these feelings into. And maybe it's just because I'm coming from that not knowing perspective that I think it would really helped. I don't know. I can't go back and change that perspective, but I think it would have really helped me. Boy. Well, let's see. What else are we going to talk about? I'm sort of emotionally involved here, so I'm my mind's a little bit blank.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I had written a few things too. I said, if you had something you wanted to say to the autistic community, something you wanted to say to the neurotypical community, and if you had something that you want people to take from our conversation, what would those be?
Oh wow. I suppose the main advice I give to anyone in relation to autism is play to your strengths. Like I said earlier, just about the first thing anyone learns about autism is that it's supposed to be a bad thing, and if that becomes the defining point of the autism discussion, it's not only deeply depressing to the autistic person and those around them, but it's also a massive waste. So what I say to the students, to people I give advice to online, to audiences I deliver talks to, is if you're human, you have strengths. And if you're autistic, you also have strengths. The turning point for my life was simply finding a place in the world where I was able to play to my particular strengths. Okay. So, yeah, learn what you're good at, find opportunities to do what you're good at. And if you're not particularly good at English and you're not particularly good at maths, like the things that you're supposed to be good at, then, well, that's not the be-all and end-all of living as an adult. It's finding the things that you are good at and finding places where you have opportunities to be seen playing to your strengths, and the opportunity to recognize yourself as doing the things that you are good at. That'll be my defining message to the autistic community. Find out what you're good at and do it.
That helped me too, just to let you know. That was an inspiration for me.
Brilliant.
I mean, really. Okay, and if you could say something important that you think the neurotypical community should know about autism.
Despite what you hear in the media and in day-to-day conversation, autism is more than just the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And even though we're quite right to talk about the difficulties associated with autism, please don't allow those things to drive the entirety of the conversation. And also, what I just said about autistic people playing to their strengths, a lot of the time, they're only really allowed to do that when the majority of the population, or at least the majority of the people around them, start allowing them to play to their strengths. So my advice to the non-autistic community would be to do everything you can to create an environment that allows autistic people to perform in the way that they're good at performing.
Beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
Again, another inspiration. And wow, I think we may want to wrap this up then. And
Okay.
I thank you so much, and I'd like to try to do this again if you have time. And we
Yeah, it was fun.
I just okay. Well, anyway, I'll just go ahead and shut the camera off here, and then thank you everyone for watching here. And this is a great interview, and thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay.